Well, hi Liz. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here today on Sit Down with Steph.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to see you, to talk to you, and to be part of this conversation today.
Well, thanks. So where are you zooming in from?
I am joining you from New York City, where I live and work fully remote, so all in one.
Well, fun. So, Liz, for our listeners and viewers who don't know you, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Liz Buechele. I am the founder of the Smile Project. So it's a nonprofit organization all dedicated to spreading joy and kindness and really empowering people to make a difference in their community, no matter where they are or what their story is. So I've been doing that for 10 and a half years now, which is really mind-boggling to even think about. But that's been probably one of the biggest joys of my life is my work on that. Outside of the Smile Project, I work in the nonprofit sector. I've spent my entire career in nonprofits, and I'm currently working for an education nonprofit that I really enjoy working for. And yeah, that's kind of my little spiel.
I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but I want to go into working with nonprofits. So
Oh,
I'll have
amazing.
to dig your brain a little bit more about that later.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So tell me more about how the Smile Project got started. What was its origin story and the beginning of it?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite stories to tell. So the Smile Project, I always like super emphasize when I talk to people about it, is that it was like an accident. I had zero intention of starting a nonprofit organization. So I said I've been working on it for 10 and a half years. I started it when I was 17, and it was kind of a weird, like I said, not that wasn't the plan, right? Like I always knew I wanted to do something to make the world a better place. And I always had these big grandiose ideas of changing the world, but I also totally bought into this idea that like in order to change the world, I would have to solve world hunger and make world peace and do all of these like really crazy lofty things that don't really feel realistic or tangible. And so, well, that was always something in the back of my mind as a teenager. It didn't really click for me. And so there was always like that like pressure of something, wanting to do something, but not knowing where that would go. And I think maybe there is subconsciously something that kind of led me to the Smile Project as it stands today.
It's funny how the
But
stars kind of tend to align.
totally 100%. But how we actually really got started is I was 17. Like I said, I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, just north of Pittsburgh, and I was driving home from high school down these like same country back roads I've been on my entire life. And it was November, but it was unseasonably warm. So I had my windows down, I had my radio up, and I was just like having a good time. And I can tell you the exact turn on Pattinson Road, where like I had this very clear thought that was like, day one, happiness is those perfect car rides where the radio just plays all the right songs. And my second thought was like, okay, that's not like people don't think like that, right? That's not a normal like
Right.
thought
Not
process.
a normal daily thought to have, especially
Yeah,
at
like
17 when you're
well,
angsty and hormonal and all of
totally
the things.
angsty, totally. But it's not even that. It's also just like I felt like I would have been like, oh, like this is nice, right? Like that would have been the thought, like, oh, this is nice, like I love this song or something more like, but it was day one. So then like any 17-year-old in 2011 who thinks they have an idea that's going to change the world, I went home, like logged onto a shared family computer and posted that as my Facebook status, and then like totally didn't think anything of it. I did write it down just because that like the writer side of me like has to record everything. So I wrote it down in a notebook, and like probably would have forgotten about it. But then the next day I was at the Costco with my mom, and our Costco has like a slight hill to the parking lot. And so I had like hopped up on the cart and I was riding it down to the car, and my mom's like, you're gonna hurt someone, you're gonna hurt yourself, or you're gonna crash the car, as a good mother does. And I was like, no, it's fine, it's fine. And
I'm good. As all teenagers do. Mom,
as
I'm fine.
as all
Stop.
adults do, right? And the woman, there's an older woman across the aisle who was like, it's okay, my husband still does that. And it was just like this very, like we all shared a laugh. It was very community, it was very fun. And I remember thinking like, oh, I got back in the car and I remember being like, oh, I could write about that, that could be my day too. The next day was Veterans Day, so I was like, oh, I'll write something about that. The next day, like I had been raking leaves with a friend, and so I wrote about that. And it's like it just like kept going.
Mhm.
um Day one, day two, day three, all in that format of like happiness is.
Right.
And I really didn't have any intention of like doing anything with it. It wasn't, again, like I was just, as like the writer side of me was kicking in of like, this is a fun experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And I was about like 2 weeks in when I was like, okay, I think I've covered everything. I wrote about my dog. I wrote about like the falling asleep with rain hitting the window, like all of those like, feel good things. But then I was like, yeah, but what if there was something else? And so actually today, I haven't done it yet, but today will be day 3,835 consecutive days of
Wow.
happiness. And so that's crazy.
That is crazy.
um, to think that like 19 days in, I was like, there's nothing else. And now to have be coming up on 4,000 days,
Mhm.
it's really hard to fathom like what that does to someone's psyche. Just
Right.
this everyday like desire and need to find a daily joy.
Mhm.
But that's kind of how we got started. So I was, like I said, I was in high school. I was a senior in high school, and I was posting these happinesses statuses, and eventually people started to like come up to me in gym class and be like, "Hey, what are you doing? Like, are you going to go to 100 days? Are you doing it for a year? Like, what's the plan with all of this?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I'm just But then people I didn't know, like I went to a really big high school, and so it was my friends at first, but then it was like people who like I wasn't as close with maybe coming up and being like, "This is cool. I like it." And I was like, "Okay, maybe there's something more to this."
Mhm. Like maybe this
So
could be bigger than I originally thought.
totally. Yeah. And I was like, maybe this is how people change the world, right? I was like, maybe it's not like immediately solving an
Lowering
emergency.
world hunger, creating time travel. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so I, right around the time I was graduating from high school, I, built a website and figured, I would do more with this. I just wasn't sure what that more was yet. And it's taken me like a number of years to kind of work out what that more looks like.
Mhm.
So today, like our main programming is built around kindness. It took me a while to really identify that as our core cause. But we have Spark, which is strengthening positivity and reinforcing kindness. And that is a kindness club that people can start in their mostly colleges and high schools, some middle schools, some elementary schools. And we're working on developing what that program looks like, for, like by grade level, or sorry, I should say more like by age grouping,
Mhm.
because right, what works at a big college necessarily won't work at like a tiny rural middle school, or whatever the case
Right.
is. But the idea behind those clubs is like getting young people together in groups of other young people who care about making the world a better place, and be like, look, I know you want to make a difference in the world. Let's start with your community. Let's start with your peers. Let's start with each other, and let's have conversations about positive mental health. Let's do something nice for your fellow students during finals week. Let's talk about how we handle and manage stress. Let's, and it's really cool to see that program specifically because it is so youth led and youth run. And like I said, what works in one Spark Club might not be the best fit for another. And so to see them really, take the lead and find out what they want to have their club be, even year to year, can change as leadership
Mhm.
changes, as students graduate or come into the club.
That's cool that they kind of get to take it on and make it their own and really just take it and run.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a really, I like telling the Spark story as well. I was probably 19, or maybe I just turned 20, and I was speaking at a leadership conference about the Smile Project, which at that point in time was really just still me recording, those daily happinesses that I mentioned.
Right.
And a student came up to me afterwards and he was like, "I love everything that you're doing. How can I be involved?" And I was like, "You cannot." Because I had graduated high school, I'd moved to college, and I how that is. Your first year of college, you're settling in, you're making friends, you're getting involved, and there's just so much happening that you're like, okay, I might maintain something. But at least for me, Smile Project just kind of, I was maintaining the same things, but it was hard, at least at first, to figure out which direction I wanted to go and how I wanted to grow. And so I hadn't thought, at that point, like, oh, someone wants to be involved. Well, this is just me writing in my little journal and posting on Facebook. I don't really know what that would look like. And so that was the night the Spark program was born, based off that one question.
Okay.
So when people talk about like the Smile Project and it's like all of those, like that one question is what sparked like really our flagship program. And so I
Mhm.
think about, to go back to that, or with this recurring motif, right, of changing the world, it's like that one question from that one student is why we have a Spark program now.
Mhm.
um, and that's just like such a great example of like,
Is that person still involved?
they're not, they were when they were in school, but they have since graduated high school and college, so they're now out in the world. But they were for some time. It was really cool to see.
That is really cool. And the Smile Project has like you guys have like a staff now, right? You have multiple people
uh
who kind of work on it.
We have volunteers.
Volunteers,
So
yes.
like any good scrappy little nonprofit, we have a really good group of people who have helped out throughout the years, whether like in a long-term way, like in advising work, whether just for a project here or there. We have an incredible graphic designer that we work with, but for the most part, everyone that contributes to the Smile Project in some way really does it because they love and they care about kindness and making the world a better place. And they just believe so much in our mission and our goals and what we want to do. And that is so incredible to me because, you know, it's one thing, like I've been working on it for 10 and a half years, just as like my little side project volunteer thing. And it's just such a part of me at this point that it almost doesn't phase me that it's just like a volunteer gig, right? But it's still like something like, wow, people just like want, like they believe in this so much that they also want to, you know, just after their full-time job come and spend a few hours with me brainstorming things or working on things. I think that's like something I will never ever take for granted. I think that's so special that we have a community like that.
And it is special. And I think that you've done such a good job at making the Smile Project something that everybody can relate to. And kind of like what you were saying, like happiness is it seems like such a simple idea, but it really has such an impact on the way that you think and on your brain. And back whenever I was competing for Miss Texas Outstanding Teen, and when we first connected back in like 2016, 2017, that was kind of my first thing that I started to do was I adopted the happinesses and I posted it on my Facebook every single day. And I really had the same reaction here in Texas, in the Dallas area, from people who knew what the Smile Project was, people who didn't, and random people, even from, I also went to a big high school. So random people from my high school kind of started to come up to me and be like, oh, what is this? What are you doing? And taking note of it. And I'm sure you feel the same way, but it's so cool when other people post like their happinesses on their Facebook or their Instagram or whatever it is, because you did yours. And not only do you get like a little glimpse into their life and the things that bring them joy, but it's such a cool feeling knowing that they're going to have that to look back on. Like I love looking back at my Facebook memories that come up, and it's like, on this day 3 years ago, my happiness was this and this. And immediately I'm brought back to that day and that moment that I probably would have completely forgotten if I never would have kept track of it. And I personally have kind of evolved. I do the 1 second of the day videos, and those have kind of evolved into my happinesses. And so even though I don't write it out, I take a video of it. And at the end of each month, I put it together. And that's my way of being like, okay, like here's all the little snippets of my life that I just don't want to forget, because I loved doing happinesses. But whenever I got to college, I like social media detoxed and was like, I don't want to be posting every single day. Like I had so much going on. And so I was like, okay, how do I keep this thing that means so much to me and is important to me? And for me, especially again, like being an angsty, moody teen, like I noticed a difference in myself in the time that I took to keep track of my daily happiness versus like the days that I didn't. And I would go through periods where I would just forget to keep track of it, or I would be busy and I just would forget to do it. And I noticed that it really impacted the way that I thought about my day. At the end of the day, I wasn't thinking about like, oh, my happiness was doing this. It was just all of the stress of the day and all of the things that I had going on. And so I just admire the mission and just how applicable it is to anybody. I mean, I had kids that I worked with that loved doing it. And my parents even did it for a little while, and just random family friends. And so I think that the mission is just absolutely incredible. And I love that. It's something that, I mean, I hope, like, do you plan to do that for the rest of your life and keep track of it every day?
Oh man. First of all, I love everything. Thank you for sharing all that. That's so cool to hear. And I so echo what you're saying, like seeing other people pick up the habit and begin to write or share their own happiness is just like unreal. It's so special. But yeah, I mean, at some point I was like, I'll just do it till I can't think of things anymore. But somehow, right, like it just has become such an ingrained part of me that I can't imagine not. And it's so funny to think like, like when you're like first starting, it's like, oh, like 100 days in, I should stop. But like 300 days in, it's like, wow, I'm really, really scraping the bottom of the barrel here, but like, there'd be so many days where I'd be like, oh, it's like 11:30 p.m. and I haven't written it. But then like those days became like way fewer and further between. Like where they just like I mean, like, yeah, does it still happen sometimes where I'm like, oh man, it's been a busy day, I'm flustered, I can, but like it's so seldom compared to like when I started. And I feel like that's like speaks so much to like truly like the rewiring that happens in your brain. And like,
Mhm.
and I love that you're doing the 1 second videos. And I think that's so cool. And I think what you said about like remembering, I'll see an old happinesses too and be like, what's that? Oh my gosh, I remember exactly what that's about. And it's like, and sometimes there's such a small obscure moment that it's like, yeah, that's not really like the big thing I would have remembered from that year or something like that. But
Yeah, like
like
a
now that I
random
have
day in February 2017, like well,
exactly,
I
but
was
it's
in high school doing what? Probably like nothing of importance, but it's fun to look back and be like, oh, like that's the day that I did that thing with my friends for senior year. And those little, yeah, just those little moments. And you kind of mentioned it, and I really want to talk about it more, is like just the mental health shift that
mhm.
keeping track of
Yeah,
your positivity has on your brain. So can you tell me a little bit more about kind of like what that's been for you, or maybe like how you've seen that
totally.
impact other people? Because I know for me personally, like I have, like I said, like I really noticed a big shift in the way that I like noticed those little moments throughout the day that I didn't before I
Mhm.
kept track of my happinesses.
Yeah, it's I noticed the shift a lot in those first few years, especially, or probably like more so, I should say. But like you said too, right? Starting it at 17, started recording at 17, very much like an angsty teenager, very much right, like as we talked about, like wanted to change the world, didn't know how to do that, felt all this like pressure and guilt and perfectionism and all of these like things that you feel very deeply and heavily when you are that age, and that is very real. Like I don't want to just also write it off to like being a teenager and having hormones. It's not that. I mean, there's a lot of very real, valid things that you are feeling and experiencing at
Right.
that point in your life. And so for me, I was like the last person that should have been in my mind, right at 17, was the last person that should have been writing or talking about happiness, just because it wasn't necessarily on my radar, right? Like I was a good student. I had great friends. I was in activities and sports and music and really involved and like loved school and all of that. It just like it wasn't on my radar to be like, I'm gonna go and think about all these things that are good. Like it just wasn't me necessarily. And so to start writing and then just have to find something every day, it really like did something to me. I distinctly remember actually my it would have been my second year of college. Um I was like a friend came over to my dorm room, and we were talking, and we were kind of talking about like a day that they were having, they were kind of like frustrated with. And in my mind, everything that they were saying, I was like flipping into a happiness is somehow. And I remember sitting there and being like focused, like you need to be an attentive, good friend right now. But my mind just kept being like, oh, like hearing something that maybe wasn't super great. And then my mind was like doing some like weird thing. And then on the other side, it was coming out with like, but how can we like flip this script into something that's going to be
How can
like
we find the happiness in that thing? It
even in
like
the
no
yeah,
matter how bad your day was, there
yeah,
has to be that one good thing.
that's totally it. And I think one thing I'm very, very mindful of is just like this idea of, right, like I'm sure you've heard of like the toxic positivity and like all of the things where it's just like, oh, everything's fine all the time, like this is great. And I do worry about how we talk about happiness, and especially with positive psychology, which I've studied a little bit as well. I want to make sure that everything we do is also grounded in like reality and not sugarcoating things, and also like addressing that there are very real like systemic issues with so many things in our world. And to act like I can just be like happiness is car rides and like be like this is everything's better now, like is naive at best and maybe like even harmful at worst. And so like I try to keep our focus on like this is something, the way I see happiness is now is it like it makes me it grounds me, it makes me a better version of myself, and it changes how I see the world. And because of all of that, I am a more whole and well person who can like go out and make a difference in the world. Is
Mhm.
if that makes any sense at all. Like
It
it is
does.
my like
Yes.
grounding thing so that like I can go out and make a difference and support causes that are really important to me, and try to make the world a better place in other ways, because this is something that just like is steadying and that reminds me that there is good. And um I don't know if you've like dealt with any of that, just in
Mhm.
like with the toxic positivity, or how you manage to like also be real and talking about things with that when you're
Yeah.
writing so much about happiness.
Especially kind of going off of like my 1 second of the day videos, during COVID, when
Mm.
all of my days looked the same, it was really hard to try and find days where there was something different, or I felt like there was something that was really joyful or something that was worth remembering.
Mhm.
And in those days, some days I just didn't take a video because I was like, well, that day was just like yesterday. So
Right.
I guess I'll just wait and see what happens tomorrow. And I remember whenever I was keeping track of my happinesses, I did kind of go through a few just really, really bad days
Mhm.
where I didn't think I had anything to put. And so I would kind of just put something down and be like, okay, like that's that. And I'm so, and I don't know if you can relate to this in the same way, but I'm so glad that I still did that. And on the
Mhm.
days where I didn't do anything memorable, I'm so glad that I still did take videos, because I look back and I don't remember the bad days. I don't remember the bad parts, but at least I remember. And maybe this sounds really corny and cliche, but it's almost like a more so of a not, wow, that day was so great and these great things happened, but that was just a normal average day in my life, and it might have been a bad day, but I made it through. And it's
Mhm.
kind of encouraging for the bad days that are inevitably going to come, and to remember, okay, well, I made it through those, I'm going to make it through these. And not every day is going to be this beautiful, incredible, joyful day, and of course we all want those to happen as much as possible, but that's kind of going to the toxic positivity thing. Like that's just not the reality of life. And so I think sharing all of these great moments is so helpful for us and so helpful for others, but
Mhm.
being realistic with yourself and kind of finding that balance is so important.
I agree 100%. And I think a lot of times just people who know what I've done and who have known me, especially, know me for 10 years. I mean, that's a lot of happiness. It's almost like that's my like claim to fame, right? And so a lot of people are like, oh, are you happy all the time? You like you're so positive. It's like, no, right? Like that's no one's happy all the time. And if they
Mhm.
try to sell that they are, I feel like that's not healthy for anyone really. And I think that's a maybe like a false like goal for someone to work towards, because I don't think the goal is to be happy all the time. I think the goal is to know how to like know yourself and know how to manage your own emotions so that when things come up you feel comfortable in addressing and handling them. If like anything, it's like about building the resilience, so that when those really bad days happen, you're like, okay, well, like I still know there's good in the world because I have been doing this work. It's like I've been working out this muscle in my brain, to believe there's good and to know that there are happy moments, and that even if today is so bad, I know that there were so many happy moments before and there are going to be so many happy moments in the future. So if right now I just need to like make a happiness is about what I had for dinner just to, still flex that muscle and keep it fresh, then like I'll do that because, tomorrow is going to be different. And I don't know, it's just something I'm very aware of. And a lot of the writing we do on the Smile Project blog as well, I try to also like spin in things that maybe don't seem as open, as outwardly like sunshine and rainbows, but there's
Mhm.
always like a lesson and something where we're going to talk about like um, just like more of the realistic side of things, right?
Right. I
Yeah.
think that's the perfect way of putting it. It does feel like a muscle, and it feels
Mhm.
like something that you have to practice. And those first, for me, the first like 30, like the first month was really hard.
Mhm.
And then that second month was also it was also kind of difficult, just making sure that I was doing it every day and trying
Yeah.
to, again, like stay creative, make sure that you're not repeating anything. And then you kind of get you not used to it, but yeah, it's a muscle. It gets stronger, you get more used to it, it becomes a habit. And it doesn't have to be so much of a conscious thought. It starts becomes becoming subconscious, and it's, oh well, like happiness is doing this, or I find joy in this, or oh, maybe this can be my 1 second of the day, like whatever it is.
Mhm.
For whoever's listening to this later on, find what it is that works for you. If it's writing something, I had friends who started to write it down in a journal because they're big journaling people. Like one of my very
Mhm.
best friends, she journals every single night. And so
Love
I remember I challenged her for like a month to write down a happiness is in her journal. And there was times when if I wasn't on social media, I would write mine down on paper just to keep it up and
Yeah.
to stay doing it. And again, like you said, I had never really thought about it in that way, like a muscle, but that's really how it feels, is that you have to work it out. It has to become regular. You have to make sure that you're keeping up with it to make it stronger. I love that. I think that's the perfect way of thinking about it.
Yeah, it's you just reminded me too when you're saying like the first year or first like 30 days, right, is definitely like the toughest because you're adjusting to this new thing, like any new project or activity that you start, right? And
Mhm.
I didn't have a smartphone, right, for like the first 3 years of Happiness Is. I had my little flip phone, and so I posted those first 3 years from my computer, and I have like a distinct memory in college of like like being out with some friends and driving home at like 11:30, and the entire car was like, we're gonna get home in time, we're gonna get home in time, because like we like everyone knew that like
You had to
midnight would
post
have
by
been like,
midnight.
yeah, like it like doesn't matter if it would have gone out at 12:04, no, but like we were all like really committed. We like all like got into our dorm parking lot and like ran upstairs, like I don't know
That's
why that
so
just
cute. I
popped
love
into
that they
my
were
head.
so invested.
Yeah, it was team effort for sure. Like, what are you gonna write? I'm like, I don't know yet. Everyone like we're just frantically it's a lot easier now, I can be
Mhm.
out, I can be traveling, whatever, as long as I have my phone, it's a lot easier to make sure that, you know, they get out. But that is a
Mhm.
very funny memory of just also how much like the technology has changed in those 7 years. Is quite funny to think about.
That is funny to think about. Yeah, I've always kind of done mine on my phone, so I didn't think
Right.
about that.
Yeah. It's funny.
So what is it for you that on the days that are hard, where maybe you are struggling to come up with something, like what's kind of the process that you go through to stay accountable and to, like you said, like really like flex that muscle and keep it strong?
Yeah. I think early on I had a docket. We like called it, we all referred to it as the docket. And it was like on days when like so many good things happened, but you only wrote about one, I would write some of the extras on this docket. So if there was a day that was just like really crazy, I would pull from that docket, and I was like, I'll just, just to keep things going, because that still felt authentic and genuine to my experience with joy. Um, but and then there also were moments where like like I said, it'd be like late at night, I would be talking to a friend, and be like, oh, what's my happiness is today, I'm tired, like what's been good today, like you kind of have those conversations. But those days really, I mean, I think about most of those days in their early years, they're at the end of my high school, their college a little bit, but I don't know, I guess at a certain point it just becomes a non-negotiable, and I guess it always was, right? I just didn't realize how like um just like completely like I don't I it doesn't cross my mind as a thing to do, because it doesn't cross my mind as a thing I wouldn't do, if that tongue twister riddle makes
Yes.
sense. But I guess it's a
For
good
you,
question.
it's probably like brushing your teeth. Like
Yeah.
you wake up, you go, you grab water, you brush your teeth, you do your skincare.
Mhm.
Like for me, that's my morning routine. And I
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
you don't have to think about it. You just get out of bed and you
right,
just immediately go to do it.
yeah,
And so I'm sure for you, like that's just how it is now. Like you wouldn't consciously be like, okay, like I need to go brush my teeth this morning. Can you just go do it?
right,
And
right.
so, yeah, I mean, I think that's probably like the ultimate sign of knowing that like a habit has really been ingrained and you really kind
Yeah.
of accomplished that goal, I guess really is what you could call it.
Hmm.
So, how long would you say it took until you got to that point?
um I mean, to be clear, there are still like days, like if something very like dramatic and intense or busy or bad, like there are times where it's like, man, can't believe I gotta like do this today. Like when the world feels so heavy, like there's certainly times like that. But I mean, at least I don't know, 7 years now. It's just not. It's probably even been long. I feel like after the first couple years, maybe first 2 3 years, uh, it just has become, because I mean, I think there were some times earlier on where I was like, I'm gonna stop. 500 is a fine number. I'm gonna stop. Uh, but I also kind of knew that that was never like really in the cards. It's just it's too good for me, and that sounds so strange to say, but it's like it takes 5 minutes every day really to write it down and post it across our social media pages, and the return I get is so, and it sounds so incredibly selfish, and like that's okay, like the act of just like writing these things down has been so good for like my mental well-being, that it's like, yeah, I think I'm gonna keep doing this because of like how it makes me feel. Like
Mhm.
it's a very positive thing for all the things we talked about, all the like
Right.
how it helps you remember and how it helps you see the world differently. Um, and it's so easy. That's what I always tell people. I'm like, yeah, anyone could have done this. Like, right? It's like there's nothing that profound about, like, there's lots of wisdom about like writing down things you're grateful for. It's basically that, right? Like
Right.
it's pretty simple ask. The thing
Mhm.
that makes it profound is just the continuation, like the longevity of the thing.
Mhm. Yeah. So what do you think is next for you? And do you have any big plans for the Smile Project? Like what's next?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm actually heading out of town this week, and I have all of my Smile Project stuff lined up to just spend some time like thinking about like big picture goals. I was talking to a friend just the other night about like, we just hit our 10-year anniversary, and I want to really think about like where I want these next 10 years to go, because I always talk about like there's time for growth and there's time for maintaining. And I feel like these past few years we've been kind of maintaining with like our Spark clubs. We've been maintaining with like our social media and our blog writing and the way we engage with our community. And we've launched new things here and there, but I kind of want to spend some time thinking about strategically, about like what do we really want to do these next 10 years? How can we make an impact on people, and how do we do that responsibly and ethically, and how do we bring more voices to the table, and how do we um, just like grow in a really like authentic way. So all of these questions are things I've been sitting with for a little bit now, and I'm excited to see what the next 10 years look like.
I'm
um,
excited to see what the next 10 years like. And you always have someone here in Texas to pioneer the mission and to keep it down
I love
here
it.
far,
I love
far, far away. But yeah,
it.
still the same mission, still the same message. It's needed here just like it's needed up in your area.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm excited. One thing I'm looking forward to, just everything we've talked about, right? But we launched an ambassador program a couple years ago to really formally involve more people, and kind of give them the tools and the encouragement to write and record their happinesses. And so
Hmm.
just as something that's like given my life so much, I don't want to say joy, I want to think of a different word, but just so much like richness and fullness, right? This habit of happiness is.
Hmm.
So the opportunity to bring more people into that and be like, yes, this really is going to change your life in a non like scammy way, right? Like that's something I'm looking forward to, is bringing
Hmm.
more people into our ambassador program.
I love
And
that. I mean, I love being an ambassador, and sometimes for me on really busy days, I'll get the notification from our Smile Project ambassador page, and I'll be like, "Oh, like I haven't done my video today," or "Oh, I haven't taken like the note of what my
sure.
happiness is for today." And that'll sometimes like be my reminder, or I've even taken ideas from other people's. Like there was one person who their happiness is one day was that they got like a new coffee mug or just something
Mhm.
super random like that. And I think like the week after I went to Target and got a new coffee mug, and I was like, well, I'm just going to use that as my happiness is too. And
Love that.
yeah, I mean, it really is one of those things that seems so simple, but really can be profound if you make it and if you look into it and view it that way. And I think that's a choice. It's a conscious choice that you have to make, but
Mhm.
the hardest part is just being open to it, I think, and just accepting it and kind of embracing it. And I talked a little bit in my last podcast about how change can be really hard and really
Mhm.
scary, but I
Yeah.
think just doing really one sentence, 1 second, one video, whatever it is for you listening every single day, like it's really possible, and it's attainable, and it's something that I really feel like anybody can do. So Liz, what would you say is your advice for somebody who's looking to start writing down their happinesses every single day, or recording it or posting it or doing something along those lines? Like what would be your advice to them for starting it and sticking with it?
I like this question a lot. My first immediate brain went off to like, okay, well, like I write all of them down in a notebook. I have 10 of the notebooks are is on my 11th notebook now, but they're all the same notebook, and they're all very organized, and it's very, but I'm like, well, that's what works for me, right? Because I'm a writer and I like tangible notebooks and I like seeing all of that. But that doesn't feel like the best advice to give, knowing that, like you said, some people want to have the video or the picture or the whatever it is. I have a friend who is in the ambassador program who has a sticky note next to their coffee maker. So when they go and they make their coffee in the morning, they see it says happiness is. So I would say my advice would be to find what that thing is for you. So like for me, it's my notebook. For them, it's the sticky note next to the coffee maker. For someone else, it might be like a social media notification, like an alarm on your phone at a random time. There's so many things that, little tricks that might help you. But I feel like you, listener, are the best person to know what you need and what would work for you. So I would say find what does, and don't be afraid if it like changes or you try a few things and they don't stick. Like that's cool. And then like start, and then just like keep going. Like keep going even when it's hard, even when you like look around on a really awful day and I'm just like, you know what, I'm going to write about my pillowcase, like
Mhm.
something just to keep it going. And let yourself surprise yourself, because like again, like you'll probably hit a couple weeks in and be like, that's everything. But that is not, I promise you that.
Mhm.
And so if you can just like force yourself to get through the discomfort of this like new, maybe weird way of thinking about things and seeing things, when you get to the other side of like, there's a very clear like other side, and then you're just like, okay, cool, now I see it everywhere. And that is the most beautiful gift I've ever experienced. So I would love to see so many more people experience that as well.
I love that. I think that that's great. Just invaluable advice that anybody can take with them. And so to those of you listening, I hope that today is the day that you decide on something and that you start tomorrow. And if you do, feel free to tag me or hashtag spread the smile or tag the smile project, and let us know and follow your journey too. So thank you so much, Liz, for coming on. I'm so excited to see what's next for you and what's next for the Smile Project. So yeah, everyone take care of yourself and we'll talk soon.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for listening.